Hey everyone, this video is going to cover the last two cards of the major arcana, starting with Judgment and the World. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Judgment since that's first. Okay, so number 20 of the major arcana. Judgment, when you get that in a reading, it normally it indicates when you come to a decision. A lot of times when I see Judgment, I tend to compare it to Justice because both have a lot to do with making decisions and weighing things, pros and cons to a situation. So, but the only difference is with Judgment, the decision is more. It's more based on. It's based on a spiritual backing, where Justice, it's got a more sound logic to it. It's more of a practical application. You're making a decision based on something that's more physical or not so spiritual, in other words. So with Judgment, think of it as spiritual. Like for instance, I'll give an example. You feel your calling. You made a decision. You separated the wheat from the chaff. And a lot of times you will find that when you are faced with a difficult decision, you'll see Judgment, but the only difference is when you get Judgment, it's a little easier to make that decision because you're drawn to that decision based on the spiritual connection. So, Justice, in other words, is when you make a decision which has no real spiritual component to it. A lot of times you'll see it coming in a court reading. For instance, a court situation, legal situations. Judgment is more about making your decision for work. Wanting to know. You want to know what you want to do for a living, and you haven't decided yet, and so you come to the realization, now this is what I want to do. It's like that aha moment, basically. So that's what I mean when I'm saying it's a little easier to make the choice because it's so clear, it's like a revelation coming to you. Whereas Justice is more, you take the time out to think, and you got to really think hard, and it even has like a very it has a very it's got a harsher, I would say, a more harsh vibe to it, because you could be dealing with the consequences of your actions with Justice, but with Judgment it's more of a forgiveness for past actions, in other words. So I know that's that could be a little limiting, because you do have to look at some cards, what cards are next to them, but just at its rawest definition, I do think of Justice as more of a punishment and Judgment to be more of a forgiveness. So there's that difference as well. At least that's, to me, that's how I interpret it. That's how it's always worked for me. I encourage everybody to just come up with their own, definitions, whatever works for them. But for me, this is how it's panned out during, in readings. And when I do readings for people, they tend to tell me that, yeah, it's right, So yeah, so that's what I got for Judgment. And for instance, if you're other examples in love relationships, for instance, you get Judgment and you finally realize what you really want to do. Do you want to keep your partner, or do you want to move on? And you feel a pull, almost like, I'm not trying to get all spiritual on everybody, but it's like when you feel spiritually inspired. You feel inspired to go make that decision. It's an epiphany, in other words. Whereas with justice, you know, it's more of like a grueling process. Like you might spend nights like, you know, sleeping on it, really taking time to think of the decision you want to make. And you gotta, you know, write a list and weigh out the pros and cons. Judgment isn't so much like that. It's just more of like a bam. You get a revelation and you know what you want to do. So you can apply that to, you know, other situations, you know, not just relationships, whether you want to keep a partner or not, but in work, you know, you want to make you want to change your career, you know, you finally realize what your calling is, and that's where judgment goes, you know. And just keep in mind, you got to look at the surrounding cards and how that affects the meaning of judgment. So, but I'm just describing what it means in its natural state, in its form of just, you know, by itself. Things tend to change depending on what they're next to. So, and anyway, so now I'm gonna move on to the world. Okay, and so for the world, there's you know, it makes sense after you make your judgment and you've made the right choice after judgment, you know, you come to the world phase of your life, meaning everything starts to make sense now. You're very happy with the state of the world, at least your world, and you're very excited about how things are panning out in life. I read in a book, this really stuck with me. It's by an author called John Bunning, and she goes on to say that, you know, oh, it's Thanksgiving, and, you know, it's after you've indulged yourself with your Thanksgiving meal, and, you know, there's a loyal mutt, and you got a mug of coffee. You know, it's just when everything feels complete and happy, you know, you got everything you could ever want at that moment. You know, you have a pet, you ate a delicious, you know, dinner, you have your loved ones with you. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? And so the world is that card, and you have to look at other cards, like I said, to find out if it's saying that this is going to be the way your life is going to feel for a long time, or just, you know, an experience of some kind. For instance, if, you know, and it all depends on your question too. For instance, if you're asking about how your dinner is going to turn out tomorrow, your family dinner, and if you get the world, well, it'll be a really good experience if you see the world. Everything will be successful. If you, for instance, get the world asking about how I don't know, how your finances are going to turn out from here on out for the rest of your life, then it's got more of a it's a more powerful card to get, because you're asking for how things will turn out from here on to indefinitely, you know, meaning you're going to do very well for a long time. And other ways to weigh out the meaning of the world could be, if you have the Ten of Pentacles lying next to the world, well, then that just means you pretty much are set for life. You're doing very well financially. So there's cards that, you know, tell you whether this world feeling, this world experience, is just a blip of time that you'll be going through this, and to just enjoy it while it lasts, or if it's saying that this is the excitement you'll feel for, you know, the rest of your life. Yeah, that's how you have to look at it. So it's a pretty simple card. I don't think it's really, you know, it's one of the best cards, I would say. I love the World card, and I love the Death card, because you know, if you're stuck in a bad situation and you see the Death card, it means the end of all your problems. So but then the World card is just positive, you know, in its nature. You know, it's a very positive meaning. I mean, you got the world in your hands. What else could it be saying? So it's a very uplifting card. It's when you reach the end of your journey, So there's a reason why, of course, it's the last card of the major arcana. You know, you come to the end of the lesson. You've essentially learned the lesson that you were supposed to learn, and that's the reward you get for it. And then, you know, you start back to the full beginning where everything gets exciting again, because that's how people tend to be. You know, that's that's the healthy way to live your life, you know, is by going through cycles of different lessons we need to learn in our lives. And the world is the last is the last stop, essentially. So and you know, as some of you may already know, the world and all the other major arcana cards, they're all fated lessons. So it's not to say that it's set in stone. It's a lesson, meaning you'll live your life and God will just throw something on your path, and you're supposed to learn from it, you know. And whether or not you healthily you learn the lesson, and you understand what the implications and the messages, you can move on to the next to the next lesson. But if you're somebody who is not playing with, you know, a full deck of cards, or if you're not very practical and you're stubborn, you know, any kind of thing that could block your energy, I would say that's when you're hindered and you're not able to learn all the lessons that are pretty much they're pretty much illustrated in these cards. So yeah, overall, the main scope is the world is a very good card to see. You know, later in other videos I'm gonna make, you will see examples of how I will interpret them in a spread. You know, because I'll start doing example readings, you know, with people that, you know, if any of you are watching, you can ask for a reading, and I'd be happy to do it. You know, and you know, you'll have a video out there. But yeah, so that's really the meaning of the world. You know, in relationships, it's very good. It's good for any meaning. You know, the work in the work industry. If you get the world, it means you've reached your, you know, you've fulfilled your life's purpose. You know, after judgment, you find your calling, and now you fulfilled your life's purpose. Right? That's typically how things tend to go. So it makes sense. So it's a very mature card. You know, it's where, you know, people who tend to be more mature get to see this card, because they've been they're not self-centered enough, you know, to not see this card. They've made the sacrifices, and they've made the sacrifices necessary to reach this point. So anybody who sees this card is, you know, obviously blessed in some way. Okay, so that's my definition of the Judgment and the World card. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to ask. And if anybody wants to go ahead and request a reading, please go on my website at stellartarot.com, and I would make you a video reading if you'd like, or email reading. Alright, take care. Bye.